Welcome back to Book It. We're in conversation with Bibek Debroy and Gurcharan Das. Gurcharan, before we went into break, Bibek was talking about how whatever decisions we take today, it also has a strong historical legacy. Oftentimes, some of the recommendations that are made for, sort of for reforming the railways, are they sort of, impervious to the past? And that is where some of the recommendations sort of don't work.
Well, we obviously ought to read our past and get to know our past. And that was the whole idea behind this series, to give the ordinary, thoughtful reader an idea of our historical past, the story of Indian business, the economic history, tales of trade, trade on the high seas, trade in the bazaars. And when it comes to the railways, clearly, I think that we need to actually go deeper beyond this book, that wonderful book that Bibek has written. We need to go beyond and actually look at some of these models that were there, the PPP models of the railways, to learn lessons from today, and also to actually appreciate the complexity of the whole enterprise.
Right. Yeah, because talking of reforming the railways, Mr. Debroy, in fact, you've also mentioned that the trigger for the book was when you were heading the committee, and it seems that many of the proposals that you had made, largely many of them have now been accepted. The road ahead, what do you think are still some of the areas? Because interestingly, the Indian Railways genesis was actually, again, was the private sector. And here, the railways is still a sort of domain of the government. It's a monopoly, and we are one of the few countries in the world where railways is still continues to be run as a monopoly.
Well, we are moving away from the book. But all right, since you asked me,
just to take the conversation forward, because the book is still 1947.
Yes.
Okay, but we are now looking at the road ahead. And
yes. Now, why do you say it's a monopoly? The reason I'm asking this is you're saying it's a monopoly because you're asking a question about private entry. Almost every service on the railways, on trains and on stations today actually is privatized. It's not run by the railways. Now, I'm not getting into issues of medical schools. That's a separate issue. But so far as the core functioning of the railways is concerned, on services, the private sector is already there. Normal question that people ask when they mean this is, why can't the private sector operate trains? And they're constantly surprised at my response, which is the policy today allows you to run a private passenger train or freight train.
Yes, and
most people do not know. Now realize the problem. The problem is that the railways have got into the situation they have because of decades. You cannot solve the problem overnight. It has to be incremental. Today, if take any station in UP, on an average, I'm running 1,000 trains a day on that sector. I need 3 hours for the security, not the security, the safety maintenance. I do not have more than half an hour. To build a kilometer of track along that terrain, I'm not talking about hilly terrain, it costs 12 crores a kilometer. So I have to rustle up the money. You want to run a train from Howrah to Delhi. The problem with the private sector today is that I will not be able to give you that path, the guaranteed path, which is necessary for you to be able to run that train. And I will not be able to grant you that guaranteed path until I have freed up capacity, whether it's because of the DFC or something else. Hang on, Gurcharan. Today you want to run a train from Jodhpur to Jaisalmer. No issues, you can run it, except as the private sector, you will not want that stretch where there is no traffic. So the question as to whether we will have private trains on Delhi to Mumbai is misplaced. What we may have, not very far away, is private coaches attached to a Rajdhani. That's possible. And by the way, before I finish, some of the new stations are going to be on PPP mode. And we will see the first of those by, I should think, 2019.
Bibek Debroy, Gurcharan Das, thank you very much for joining in. This is the book that it's called The Indian Railways, The Weaving of a National Tapestry. It's in the stands. Go get your copy. All of us from here, thank you very much for watching.